got the Jeep in, going and pull the engine. I did put it back together to get it in here, just so that way I didn't have to pull it up into here. I did get a lifting fixture made. Don't know how good it's gonna do, but we're gonna give it a shot. Worst comes to worst, I got one of the chain ones with the little screw and all that nonsense.
You mean you didn't have to pull it?
So it's got my dad over here to help.
You got it running and drove it in?
Yeah, I put the intake manifold back onto it. Took it back off. It's over there on the ground. There. So then I took it off again. For whatever reason, I didn't think to record that. Don't know why.
Fired right up.
Got the Jeep up in the air. Getting ready to crawl under there, do the transmission. Undo the transmission.
Give me something to do and keep going.
We're probably going to put it into a time lapse and just let it sit in the corner and watch. So, there we go.
I thought you already had a rat under there.
No. Okay, I stopped the time lapse. Couldn't really see much anyways. Most of it was done underneath. The only thing you can see from the top that we really did, I don't know if you saw in the time lapse, we removed the radiator out of the way, but we decided to remove the harness for now. It wraps so much around that transmission that I couldn't get my arms up in there. It just wasn't happening. And I don't know if my cherry picker can handle pulling the engine transmission transfer case out in one shot. So we started disconnecting the harness, which turned into a fun adventure because in order to get to the harness down below, we had to pull the exhaust out of the way. Let's get the light in here, right? So the exhaust pipe came around here, went up both sides of the engine. It was making it super hard to get to the harness, to the starter, things like that. So we had to support the transmission, drop the cross member, take out the exhaust, and now things have a lot more access to stuff, or we have a lot more access to things. So we're gonna go bell housing bolts now, and then once we get down to the last two, probably on the bottom, we'll bring in the cherry picker, pull the engine mounts, and see if we can't swing it out. That's when we'll see what we missed. Well, much struggling, I got it out, or we got it out. My father left for the evening. It was difficult. This chassis has a subframe, and then kind of like the E-bodies, it has a sheet metal unibody frame, I guess you would call it. Not really sure what the actual term would be for it. So biggest ordeal I would say was getting the motor mounts off the side of the block. We were able to get one side off with much struggle. The other side just couldn't get access. The differential here just in the way the whole way, could not get up there. So we ended up pulling it out with just the one removed. And then we found that the locator pins were jammed in there pretty tight into the block, so had to persuade them to come out. Took a little while. So torque converter came out pretty easily, or unbolted fairly easily. Looking from here, okay, that's just coolant, maybe fluid in the torque converter. Not really sure what that is. For a second there, I thought that was a plug down there in the bottom. I was thinking to myself, really? After all that, there was an inspection hole, but no. So didn't do much filming. You wouldn't have saw much but my elbows. So there's no way I would have been able to get the camera up in there to where you could actually see what you're doing. So, and I didn't want just hours of time lapse. So I did do a little time lapse in the very beginning. Didn't really show much. I don't know if I'll include it or not. But here it is. So coolant leaked everywhere as usual. Always does. Ended up with the old gloves on the deals with zip ties. Try to slow it down. Lifting bracket works pretty good. Kind of wish I'd put it forward one more notch. It doesn't quite sit level, so in the future I'm going to put it in this hole just in front of this. So I'm going to mark it just engine. Oh, this is the one that was giving us struggles. Could not get up here. I mean, we could get stuff on it because the motor mount plate like went up about right here. So we can get like short sockets and whatnot on there. But by the time we got on there, got our hand up in there, we couldn't get the torque on the bolt. And then we just couldn't get them off. It just wasn't happening. We struggled at this side for well over an hour, possibly into the second hour. I mean, it was a long time. So then of course found that I don't have long enough hardware, so I have to make a trip to the hardware store to get new hardware, long hardware. This is a used stand I picked up, doesn't have a handle, and probably a little on the lightweight side for this engine, but we're gonna give it a shot. I think this engine was like 500 pounds. Oh, 750 pounds. Okay, we're good. In my head, for some reason, I thought it said 350. So I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna hold, but we're putting it on there anyway, so. But seems to be doing okay. Did leave the engine harness in. Like I said, I just wasn't able to get my hands up on top of that transmission. They have this thing shoehorned in here. Just no space. It is jacked up a little bit with a floor jack, so it is higher than it usually is, but not much higher. We couldn't go up maybe an inch. But we were trying to, you know, tilt, rock, and tilt the engine to break those pins free. It was fun. Wouldn't say the hardest engine I've ever pulled, but definitely up there. Access was a bear. Look how just thick and monstrous these sheet metal frame rails are. I have never seen anything build something like that. And then have these big old subframes. So whenever I do get around to, I was kind of hesitant. I was like, yeah, I'll make this just, you know, a family off-roader, but not get too crazy with it. But good Lord, are these things thick. You run some tubes through that, strengthen it up a little bit. I mean, I'm sure it's probably plenty strong now. I feel way more confident driving this thing around with the family in it. I mean, obviously nothing crazy extreme, but it would be nice. And fun. I got to drive this thing just once because it didn't have any power steering. Turns out the engine fan is driven by the power steering pump. Weirdest dang thing I ever seen. I don't know why they would think that was a good idea, having all that extra load on the power steering pump. Maybe they figure it's less load than what it puts on the alternator. I don't know. Or routing all that extra tubing maybe helps cool it. Also, another weird thing this Jeep has, I know maybe one of you is interested about the Jeep and pulling the engine and whatnot. Most of you are probably interested in the car. But this condenser for the HVAC Also doubles as a transmission cooler. I have never seen anything like that either. Like, what the heck do these lines go through? Does it have rear AC? I just didn't know. Nope. Transmission cooler lines. So, there's the intake manifold. So, see if we can. So, like a dingus sitting here talking to the camera. Realized I didn't push record. Anyways, telling the story of when I went to pull the Jeep into the garage from over on the RV access. I had the intake manifold removed for building the engine bracket, engine lifting fixture. So I had to throw the intake manifold back on, no big deal. I mean, it's super easy, like LS easy and super easy. So tossed it up there, hooked up all the connectors, ran all the spark plug wires over, plugged them in, hooked up to a couple vacuum lines, EGR, stuff like that. Backed it out, drove it over here, had a little misfire, ended up finding one of the spark plug wires didn't get put on all the way, it was hanging off, so not a big deal. Went to undo the intake manifold bolts and found that I didn't tighten any of the bolts. The intake manifold was just sitting on top of the engine and somehow it started, ran. I mean, that makes me feel good about the vacuum of this engine. It just sucked that thing right down to the heads. Oops. So, kind of felt like a little bit of a dummy there, but at the same time, it's a little impressed. So, now I gotta get this lifeless husk pushed back over to the side of the house. Don't really want to do it tonight. I'm tired. It's getting kind of late, but it's hot here in California, so it'll be a lot easier to do it now than it will be to do it tomorrow. Plus, I have cars that live in here. So probably gonna move to that. That's gonna be dark and crappy. Not gonna really want to film that. Hopefully this thing rolls well. I know it's heavy, super heavy. And I don't know. I do have a mounting or an anchor point in the backyard. I've never actually hooked anything to it, so not sure how it's gonna go, trying to hook something to it and drag a vehicle up there. I could probably hook the little red rodeo up to it, drag it up there. Probably wouldn't be too bad. Contemplating shipping the Jeep off to its temporary resting place till I can move on to this different project tomorrow. I don't know. So, yeah, it's gonna be way too dark to film any of that. Just have to take my word for it that I did it. I understand my pain, but not care because you guys don't care that it sucks. Oh, all right. Good night. It's been a few days, several days. People on the internet, on YouTube, they're not kidding when they say it takes forever to get parts. Seems like that's all I'm doing is waiting for stuff to come in. So, trying to continue doing what I can, just doing something. Got the engine in here. I decided to, got a cheap stand, decided to make a simple engine run stand on it, or at least try to. That way I can try to fix all the issues before I get the engine in. I don't want to be fighting the chassis while I'm also fighting my stupidity. This is my first time putting fuel injection in anything, so it's gonna be a lot of learning. One of the things I found is, see, I have a bell housing attached to it. I was hoping to bolt the Jeep starter up to it. The Jeep starter doesn't bolt up, not even close. Completely wrong bolt pattern, so I'm gonna have to look around, see if there's another starter that works well, because that one does not. I think it's the RFE transmission that it goes to. is the 4-wheel drive. It said RFE on the side of it, 5-speed, I believe. So I don't know if that's what the issue is the weird transmission. Maybe I have to get a manual tranny starter to make it work correctly. Because, like I said, that one, not even close to bolting up. And just dealing with hardware. Had to go to the stores to get long enough hardware. Didn't have anything like that in stock for the adapter for the engine stand to the bell housing. You can see on the front, I got some slightly sketchy, very not OSHA approvedness going on under there. Trying to support the engine with that bell housing on there. There's a lot more torque on the stand here, and it definitely wants to tilt that thing forward, and I don't want to come in one day to find that thing laying on its face. So what I've been doing to pass the time is building kind of little stabilizers. Now, it's nothing fancy. I definitely didn't buy steel to do this. So this is all just kind of stuff I had lying around. Some old U-bolts out of a truck and some channel that I had, some crappy steel that I cut in half, another piece of channel that I cut in half, then welded together so it would slide on here. I didn't want to make anything super permanent on here because, you know, kind of bulky having an engine run stand. Be nice to be able to take all that crud off and just have it as a regular stand, you know, as I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So these little guys screw down, touch the floor, take the weight off of the front caster. Seems like a weak point. Just the angles, everything. Casters, I feel, are not very strong. These are well, not straight axle, but it's not at an angle like a caster wheel is. So I feel like those are a lot more sturdier. Now I'm also going to support the weight, I built these little guys. Hopefully they're not still hot. Just a simple little bracket. I'm going to run a bar from here down to here, again, removable. Going to have threads in between. Got some more U-bolts for such a thing. So gonna cut it off, weld it on to here like such. Then I'm gonna have another rod that goes on here that you can turn, that sits on it, or not rod, pipe or tubing that sits on here that you can turn. And then another piece of tubing down here that fits on the inside of the first pipe. That's how we can spin on it. Then I'll have cross drilled for pins just to make it stable so that while the engine's running, I don't really plan on revving it too much or whatnot. I mean, it's just a crappy little stand, but I don't want it to pop out of there. So simple pin through there should work. Weld the nut to the top of the pipe. Then I'll have the screw for the adjustment. I'll have this running across the top so I have plenty of surface area to weld. Then we have to work on our starter issue. So I checked this is not the bell housing off of my 4-speed. This is the bell housing, just one of the bell housings that was in the car. So my first thought was, hey, maybe this isn't a 4-speed bell housing. Maybe I just got the wrong one. So I went and verified with the other transmission, and it's the same thing. But if you look, I mean, there's just no lining those bolts up. So I need to figure out what's going on there, because that ain't right. And that is not gonna work. So nothing too much else. So I was able to find a harness on eBay, waiting for that to even ship. Dude's taking forever, or the person, I don't know if it's dude, it's taking forever to even ship it. So hopefully that still comes. Got a fuel pump just for the regular pump that goes into a Jeep. That way I know that the fuel pressure should be correct. Obviously there's air, or the chance for error in there. Some fuel pumps, aftermarket fuel pumps, put out more or less than they're supposed to. So who knows if it's actually correct, but it should be pretty close. So I'm gonna build a little, just aluminum tank. just enough to just drop that fuel sending unit into there with a little spout so I can fill it. And then I can mount that to the stand somewhere. So that way I have just a small fuel cell. Then as I'm moving everything off of my stand into the car, because like I said, I want to cut out the floors and the trunks, and so I can't have a fuel tank in it because fuel tank bolts to or straps to the trunk. So I won't have a way to move it. I don't really want to do any welding out where it is outside. I got 220 in the garage, not out where it's at. So building that little fuel cell, I should be able to kind of just slide it in there and be able to move the car under its own power. That makes it a lot easier to be in here on the level floor where I can really work at it. It's covered, you know, slightly climate controlled. So I'm not dealing with rust, corrosion from one night to the next. Because I imagine I'm going to be doing that part in the winter. And though we don't get a whole lot of rain out here, it'd be my luck. It'll rain every single day that I try to do that. So try to make it move under its own power before that. After I get the stand kind of put together, if I'm still waiting on parts, mainly that engine harness, I'll probably move to tearing apart that transmission. There is a shift fork that is broken in it. I've had it apart, you know, back in 08, 12, 13 years, how many ever years that is ago. And the shift fork was broken. Someone had tried to braze it back together. Clearly didn't work because the pieces were in there. I'm pretty sure I threw them back in there. God, I hope I threw them back in there. So we're gonna try to TIG weld that back together, see how that works. No idea if that'll work. Probably won't work. Probably shouldn't do it. Gonna do it anyways. Worst comes worst. Well, I mean, besides it dying and wiping out the transmission. Worst comes worst, I'll just buy another shift fork. So I like to try to make things work, not just throw money at stuff. Hence, instead of just buying a run stand, you know, $400, $500, whatever it is, here I am building it for, you know, with junk, trying to make it work. So that way I can spend my dollars elsewhere and not on just some little thing. So then the other thing, like I said, I was going to try to make that fuel tank. I'll try to video capture as much as I can of that. A lot easier to video here in the garage because a lot easier to set things up and have it sit back and record stuff. I haven't really recorded doing this stand much because it's just me at night. I can't make a whole lot of noise, so I have a hacksaw just going at it. Of course, I have power tools, but power tools make a ton of noise. People are sleeping, family sleeping. Can't really be just running power tools. End up causing a bunch of problems. So I do what I can. It's slow, takes forever. That's when it's hard to videotape. That I need to get that for making the engine run and whatnot. I mean, I guess I don't really, I don't need it, but I really should, is my car has manual steering. I do not have intentions to go to power steering on it. I mean, why? So what I'm going to do is remove this power steering pump. They make a nice for the Hellcat, I think it was. I don't know, one of them's got the electric power steering, I believe. And they have a delete for this. Bolts right to it. Little standoff, little pulley, sits right here. So that way you still get your same belt running, or same belt, I don't know, you route the belt the same way. I believe it takes a shorter belt. Maybe it was the same belt. I don't remember, I have to read it again. So I'll end up getting that, but you know, same with everything else. Parts, that's more parts that are just gonna take forever. So, one of the things I was running into is this being a 2005 has the coil harnesses where over and across and goes to the other cylinder for the scavenger spark. I'm not much of a guy for looks so much and aesthetics before functionality, but I really don't like that. So I'm going to leave it how it is right now because I know it works. But what I was working towards with that is this has the coil packs that cross over like that. So most of the harnesses I can get my hands on, they actually have the coils where it's just the two coils going straight in, or the prongs going straight in. Well, turns out, looking through stuff, that also takes a special valve cover because it's got a little indent in it to allow for the coil packs to sit there like it does. I don't want to spend $500 on valve covers. I like my valve covers, or I don't not like my valve covers, and I should be able to get little pigtails that work for it. Luckily at work, one of our sensors actually shares the exact same connector. So I just got a bunch of those connectors that were junk going in the trash anyway for harnesses that had been replaced for other reasons. And I'm going to be using those to modify that, to modify the harness. So there's other things. It's supposedly out of a 6.1, so hopefully not all the connectors are different. The intake throttle valve, I think it's throttle body valve. No, the intake throttle valve, it has a different connector, so I had to buy that connector, waiting for it to get here as well. That one was totally different from the one that I had. So I do plan on, again, staying with as original of this engine as possible at first. So that means I'll be running the fly-by-wire throttle valve, not the cable. So keep it simple, just make it work good, then make it work better. Modifications will come down the road, if at all. I mean, I'd rather have a reliable running vehicle than a fast running vehicle, because how fast is it when it's always broke? Not very fast. At least I can get my enjoyment out of a reliable vehicle, and more importantly, I can have my family along with a more reliable vehicle. So I'm trying to get in as much work as I can. Also trying to paint the house, which takes forever. Luckily, someone convinced me to get an airless sprayer. Or when I say convinced me to give an airless sprayer, they were given a broken one, and I fixed it. And now I'm using a fixed airless sprayer to paint the house. That saves a ton of time. So not that any of you care about that, but that is eating a lot of my time. And I can't even imagine if I didn't have that sprayer. It would take me forever to get more videos out, to do any work on this at all. So it's kind of where I'm at. Oil pan's still not here. Hoping the 23rd of August, they said, is their next shipment that they're getting in. And as soon as they're getting in, it's going back out. They will send them out to people in the order of their orders received. So I didn't find out where I was on that list, or if there even was a possibility that I was going to be one of the ones got that. They just said maybe the 23rd. So we could be going a whole nother month until we get that stupid oil pan. And I can't even put the engine in until I get the oil pan. I got the main bolts, all 4 of them, but can't do nothing without that oil pan, or harness, or starter. So I'm hitting a wall. So I'm building an engine run stand. All right, I think that's all I really have for this video. It's definitely the end of the weekend, which means a whole nother week until I get to play with things out here. Sometimes I get out here for half an hour, but it's not doing much. So it's not even worth recording, really. So have a good week.